I see some folks joining. Thanks for doing that.
I don't know where that screen is, so I'll just have to take your word for it, Bill.
We just got a couple of minutes before we get started here. We love questions, so as you have them, please use the Q&A button at the bottom and ask away.
Comments are also welcome.
Well, Ken, I see a bunch of people on. I think we ought to jump in and get started.
Okay, sounds great.
So we are here to talk about the new tools that we have created for ProLaw. Of course, we've got a lot of experience with ProLaw. Ken, you're probably responsible for helping, I don't know, you want to pick a number as to firms to automate their billing process?
Yeah, via ProLaw, it has to be high up there, but we always had a great team that surrounded me that of course did much of the heavy lifting. But yeah, so from 98 to 2018, I spent time doing that. So pretty familiar with what's going on.
And it was my first love, writing code and getting to write the accounting system for ProLaw. And so we've taken that experience and applied it to so one of the first things we did when Ken and I got together and said, you know what, we really ought to think about coming back. And so we talked to a lot of our old firms. We talked to a lot of law firms in general. I mean, we did a ton of work with Elite also. And so we had this great experience base to pull from. And what you're going to see this morning is the results from that. What the feedback that we got. Great ideas. We really appreciate all of that feedback. And now we've turned that into some results to come and actually show you. And so I think we ought to start there. We want to give you some highlights right off the bat. So you want to take that away, Ken?
I will. Yeah, thanks for that. So yeah, what we thought we might do is just mix it up a little bit, jump over to kind of the solution. I'm just going to minimize this for right now. Jump over to the solution and just show a brief couple of highlights of how we're seeing firms use this. and the advantage that they're getting, some of those things. We're going to spend a little bit more time later on in this webinar going in it in more detail. But what we thought we would just like generalize or show you the screens, show you a couple of things of how people are using this, and then we can we'll jump back and talk a little bit more about collections. But what you're looking at right here is a combination of our first two products called Collection Queue and Inquiry Queue, and I'll spend a little bit of time on that. But if you're familiar with ProLaw, you're probably familiar with some of these screens. It takes a similar approach as far as all of our clients and matters and how we get to those. So you can see over here to the left all of your saved queries and ways to get to different things. And in fact, for today, if I just wanted to go look at my matters, it's going to show me a listing of any matter. I'm just going to pretend I'm an end user right now. So maybe not a collections professional or somebody in the firm, but perhaps an attorney. I'm on the phone with a client, and I just quickly want to come in, see my matters, and then choose the columns that are important to me. Current AR is always a fun one, but of course, spend some time knowing if people owe us money and how long they've owed it. So directly from here, click to my matters and get an initial snapshot of what I want to see from a financial perspective. And really what we did when we set out to begin Collection Queue was trying to, remove the unanswered questions from that. What could I possibly need to know if I'm talking to a client about what they owe me? And so within that, I can just come through and click on the matter itself. If you see, again, more familiarity, just a tab structure across the top, some general information that's all pulling from the ProLaw database. But maybe most quickly, I just want to get into inquiry. So one of the places that we always heard attorneys use, depending on the security rights and things like that, was the inquiry tab within ProLaw, because you can pull open the matter and you can see general information. So what we did is take that a step further and say, let's add aging to that, right? So that you can see kind of how that's broken out. WIP aging, I get all the billing contacts directly from here. And in fact, just anything from a trust standpoint or invoices and payments that have been made. And so very quickly, I can have a pretty detailed conversation about our relationship with this client from a financial standpoint. And then from this was actually born a product called Inquiry Queue. So if I'm talking to this client and I see that they owe over $30,000, but maybe more concerning is what's in WIP aging and how long that's been there. So why are we continuing to work on this, knowing that there's always already a balance? And so to give that a little bit more insight, I could just come through and toggle that particular button to get to Inquiry Queue. And then I immediately have dynamic dashboards that show me any of this type of information, right? So the tabs across the top again, so accounts receivable, WIP, what's been billed, paid, anything written off, and then down below all the details. So in that particular scenario, I want to see, who's working on this matter purely from a WIP standpoint, right? So I'm certainly one of the culprits, and then down below I can see the individual detail that is that WIP, and you get the same detail across the board, and we'll spend more time on that in a second. But really just trying to provide any of the information that would be necessary or needed as we're having conversations with clients in order to understand what our financial relationship with them is at this point in time. Anything you care to add, Bill?
Well, this is another great example of just the wonderful feedback loop that we have, because when we started showing firms the initial inquiry tab, this idea came immediately out of that. That's great, and provides really relevant information, makes it much easier to get it out to the attorneys and staff that need it. But wouldn't it be great if we could drill into that and interactively work with the data? And so that's why we turned it into Inquiry Queue.
Awesome. All right, I think I'm going to jump back. We'll use that as the teaser, and then we'll come back and look at some other exciting stuff here in just a bit. So let me go over here and see if we can get that going. I'm going to try that one more time. I was trying to get that top bar to disappear. Do you have any tips?
You look good.
Okay. All right. So yeah, so as we're talking about new tools for ProLaw, and I'm just going to advance this slide. Bill, if you want to kick us off.
Yeah, so really the reason I was talking about that starting point when working with so many firms on the billing process is because that's exactly where firms started, right? There's been a huge investment in making it much more efficient to get the bills out. Makes a ton of sense. And then once you have that working, then you tend to get focused on actually the starting point, which is the time entry. Let's do a much better job at tracking time. If we track more time, obviously we're going to bill more of it. And then you start to look at, okay, how do we make that billing process more efficient? And so before long, you start to focus on the step in between those, which is how can we make the pre-bill process faster? And so there's been a lot of investment from firms in this area. And yet it's the last step of actually sending the statements out and following up that is what actually brings the money in. And there's so much additional work that gets done in that last stage. And so this was the thing that we kept seeing over and over again as we were working with firms, was the amount of effort that it takes in this last step. So it deserves the same kind of focus that we put in to the first three stages of the relay. Now we need to apply that to the last stage and sort of finish the job.
Yeah, and as you reminded everybody at the first of this call, I've been doing this for a little while, right? So about like 23, 24 years. And it's been interesting to see, as you're putting these slides together and as we're having these conversations, from my perspective, anytime we were talking to firms, having a conversation about their existing billing system was the easiest path and kind of easiest conversation to have, because everybody immediately recognized, even in 1998, that we need a billing system. Sometimes it was Excel, but most firms realized that they needed a billing system. And from that standpoint, you could have conversations. Firms were willing to invest in that. They were willing to swap out what they had already. But really, time tracking and pre-bill edits, although somebody was tracking the time, it wasn't nearly as sophisticated as it is today. So when you go from the billing system, that's what every firm was willing to say, yeah, we'll take a look at that. And if it's better than what we're doing, we're doing that. And then as you talked about time entry, it was really around, yeah, most of our attorneys don't track time. I mean, they do track time, they just don't input it themselves. So we tried to build that over the month and then hand it over to somebody, or maybe some folks were more efficient than that. And then you saw over the years, time tracking become even more important. They're going to start doing it on their own. Let's take it to mobile devices. Let's automatically track it when they're using their computers as they're continuing to work with it. And then that very next step, in the larger law firms, you saw different versions of pre-bill editing. Pretty standard for mid-sized firm was we printed out the pre-bills, we distributed them. It takes hopefully 2 weeks, right, to get those edits back. Then we edit those in the billing system, and then we get the bills out the door. And as you know, technology changed and even clients' expectations changed, we saw people coming to the table, ProLaw included, with some really cool pre-bill editing tools that allows people to distribute those electronically. And this has been going on for some time. Some folks were just doing it like via PDF and making notes and then sending that back, which is still maybe a step better than printing them out and distributing. But then now we're seeing a lot of technology wrapped around that. But the collections piece, interestingly, just participating in this for quite a while, I call it kind of the RFP checkbox feature, right? So you're going through all the features in an RFP and it says, do you have collections? And most people say yes. And most billing systems have some form of collections by sending out, a manual reminder notice, or being able to show you that there is money owed. All of that's part of the collections process, but really wrapping workflow and automation around that. There's a couple of people that do it, but not really for the mid-sized firms. And so that led us to explore that a little deeper.
Yeah, it's very, very common in large law. And this is a similar story that we see over and over again. It's why we really focused in mid-size with ProLaw, and this is the same exact thing again.
So you want to dig into collections just a little bit?
Yeah. So one of the things that I love about this area is that making the argument to the partnership of why you should invest in this area is probably one of the most straightforward ROI calculations that you're ever going to make. So we have our example firm here that is doing 45 million a year in billing. They're running a pretty standard amount of accounts receivable relative to that billing level, which is just under 12 million. What you typically see in mid-sized firms is somewhere between AR days of 80 to 120. Right in 95 is right in the average. And the collection rate does change quite a bit depending on depending on practice area. It's 89% across all practice areas, but you have some like workers' comp that are at 97%, bankruptcies at 72%. So this is an area that's been really well studied. But the bottom line of that is if our collection rate is 89%, that means we're writing off 11%, which is a huge amount of money. And so the two most obvious ways that we can generate a direct return on investment in focusing on this area is one is reduce the AR days. So if it takes us less time to collect, and you can look at this sort of in two ways. I've kind of bundled this into just less time to collect, but there's really compressing the billing cycle, and then there is bringing the cash in more quickly. And so getting a 5% reduction in your AR days in the first year of embarking on a focus on collections is a very realistic goal. And so given the level of revenue that we're working with here, that translates into an additional $615,000 that comes in that first year. And then the other thing we really want to do by having more consistent, courteous follow-up on the accounts receivable is reduce those write-offs. And so we have another realistic goal, which is to get, what we see typically is sort of a 10 to 15% reduction. So we put 12% into our calculator here. That's another $600,000 in additional benefit in the first year. That's a pretty significant increase in cash flow. And you can translate that to whatever your level of billing is just by looking at that. That's a 3% increase in cash flow in year one. And there's really additional benefit that you can realistically achieve by just continuing to work on this process. But if you put a focus on collections, this is the kind of goal that I would recommend setting in terms of what you want to see in the first year results. I want to throw one more thing in there, Ken, which is we're not even really counting the staff time savings there. But that's a crucial part of this because that's what enables you to have more time to do a really good job of AR follow-up. And so it's sort of a hidden savings just in the amount of time that you take away doing manual processes that can now be applied to higher value work.
That's a real life example. One of our earlier adopters, we had an agreement with them that said, hey, let's track what you're doing now before installing this. Let's track what you're doing after, and let's get some of these numbers. And we've done it with a number of firms at this point. But one of the first feedback items they gave back to us was, hey, we cut 2 days out of our billing cycle. And I was asking, okay, I didn't fully understand that from a collections standpoint. And they said, well, we're using the tool to send out the bills as well. And how we were doing it before and how we can do it now actually saved us 2 days in one of the first months that we used it. So staff reduction in time is a real thing.
So you say, well, why doesn't everybody just jump in and immediately do this? And that's because there are some challenges, and we see the same challenges over and over again, which is starting with kind of the obvious one, which is we just need a defined strategy, and we need buy-in from the attorneys.
Yeah, it's been the most interesting thing, just doing many of the first demos and participating in almost all of them, is that most firms are varied in the way that they do this. Some have dedicated staff, some do push it out to the attorneys based on the type of information, and then sometimes even within that group of, hey, we push it out to the attorneys, we'll accept these 5 because we can't do anything with their clients and things. So it added some complexity, and not necessarily complexity, but just the need to be flexible and be able to accommodate regardless of what the firm's trying to accomplish.
And we're working in law firms. We're all doing that. So we know this one. It's obvious. It's tough to make change like this occur in a firm. It's why we talk about this sort of longer time frame to get to the end results, even though we get really quick wins out of the gate, which really ties to number 3, because we need those quick wins, things that are going to free up time, because this is a real issue. Like, it's already occupying all the staff time to do what we're doing today. So how are we going to improve the process? How are we going to get the time to think it through? Well, we got to have some quick wins that free up the time to do that. And then a real benefit of having a focused effort around this is the collaboration that you can create between the billing attorneys and the accounting staff.
Yeah, absolutely. And as we talk a little bit about the collaboration, so bringing integration, which has always been a focus of Bill's and mine as well, but integration of the process, that there's total exposure to what everybody's doing from a collection standpoint. And we'll shine a little light on that as we take a deeper look at the software also.
And then I think our last challenge is one that's really crucial, and it's very common pushback from billing attorneys, which is just the concern about what this is going to mean for clients. The last thing we want to do is lose a client over improving our collection process. That's not a long-term win. But we can do this in a way that is consistent. And in fact, what we actually see, the feedback that we get from attorneys in firms that have put a more standardized process in place and have more consistent follow-up, is that it avoids surprises with their clients. And I mean, clients don't appreciate large bills coming out of the blue. So if we do this well, it's an absolute win-win. Clients are happier, and the firm's cash flow improves, and the staff's, the life is a lot easier.
Yeah, and back to the difficulty to enact change, just because it supports 6 very well, you have to be flexible, right? If you try to take a collections process and just apply it across the board, regardless of firm, or even within the same firm, regardless of attorney, just, hey, this is what we're going to do. We've not found that to be the most effective way. So there's some things that you can do with technology to ease that fear of upsetting clients, depending on the personalities.
So one of the ways that we look at this is to evaluate, well, where are we at in our firm in terms of maturity model of implementing a collections process? And the bottom line truth is that we see way too many firms that are still at this first level, where there just really isn't a process, and it's very ad hoc, and it's we need money, and so the managing partner is calling up every billing attorney and getting them to focus on it this week. I hope we're moving beyond that. The next level is we've got a process. We understand what we're doing. We don't necessarily have it fully implemented or fully adopted or have buy-in, but we're moving in the right direction. And then at the next level, we start to get more buy-in. We have automation in place so that we have more consistency. We're starting to see results that come out of that. We're getting reporting that's showing us what has happened in the past. And then what we want to do is move forward so that analysis starts to tell us about what's going to happen in the future. And we've taken all of those manual processes that just keep happening over and over again. We've got those automated. Staff time is now focused on much higher value tasks. We're getting all the information that billing attorneys need out to them that's available. They're able to answer those questions like what Ken was just showing when we started. When they have the client on the phone, you're not doing that loop of trying to track them down after you put in the request to the accounting department. And then finally, our end goal is you're able to use your collections process to drive decision making in the firm. And this is when you start seeing it be really strategic, because you're choosing where you focus in practice areas, you're choosing how you onboard clients, what your acceptable level of risk is, because you have the data to support what really makes sense from a long-term standpoint for the firm.
Yeah, it's interesting. One bullet I think I could have left or put in from the chaos thing is, and maybe even a level 1 and level 2 is somewhat seasonal. And I think you alluded to that, which is there's a process, but it's not always consistent, and somewhat relates seasonal or varied, if you will, which we haven't found to be the most effective way either.
Yeah, consistency is absolutely crucial. And so what are the benefits that we get for adding automation to this process? Well, of course, we save a tremendous amount of time, and it's for everybody. It saves time for the attorneys, it saves time for the staff. If you're not actively using electronic payments today, doing so has a significant impact on getting paid more quickly. And of course, it has efficiency and time savings also. And this is part of the consistency. Like if you take away one thing about the collections process, implementing consistency is what drives results. So having a regular workflow that automatically sends out AR notices based on each billing client as to where they're at in their AR process, this produces really, really great results. The challenge is that this is difficult to do well, because billing attorneys care so much about the communication to their clients. It works much better to set this up on an automated workflow with templated emails that are very courteous, that can be customized by billing attorney, so that communication is matching the needs of each billing attorney, but we're also matching our needs to be consistent in our follow-up. And I mentioned this before, but the benefit of that is it's actually better for clients. Keeping them in the middle of the information flow and making sure things don't slip through is a great way to avoid those surprises. And then, of course, the benefit of automation is we're not only going to make the process more efficient, but it's a double win, right? We save time, but we also bring improvements in the cash flow. And this is the kind of thing that you're really starting to see. I mean, clients expect this. They have this kind of relationship with other vendors that they work with. They expect to be able to click on a link and see the interaction with your firm. They expect to be able to just pay online and put in their bank information or put in a credit card. And particularly if you have any consumer-oriented practice areas, it's essentially a requirement today, but that has really seeped into business practice areas also.
Awesome. So you want to take a look at software?
I think that'd be a great idea. We've been talking way too much, so let's look at some actual stuff.
Okay, let me do this. I'm just going to share my screen again. If I can get that going. There we go. And then if I escape out of there, and we'll jump over to this. So we're just going to rewind a little bit. Part of this will be somewhat repetitive, but I do just want to show you, because this is really cool. As you come into matters or to collection queue itself, we've mimicked, but maybe added a little functionality on how we're grabbing this information and how we're able to sort, search, and do those types of things. So for ProLaw clients, this information is updated every 15 minutes. So just to give you an idea, and I haven't seen the questions, but if that's one of them, that's what it's doing. What that allows us to do is we're actually bringing all that data over. So the performance and the speed is really interactive. And that's why you saw when it was drawing the screens earlier, how that happens. But so over here to the left, you can just kind of expand out. We have 3 primary sections. So system activities. contacts, which you could probably guess what that is, and then of course matters as well. So you can go through and build these different folders for what makes the most sense for you. If I come into, for example, over 90, however, and I see all of my firms that have anything over 90, then I can search contextually, right? So I'm not searching the entire data set or the entire database. I'm just saying, hey, show me anything that's within the over 90. If you do type into that and that has Lenora in it, type that correctly, or I'll practice that a little bit more, or Packram or whichever. So you can go through and select that way. So instead of searching the entire database, if you just want to focus on the over 90, you have the ability to do that directly from within here as well. If I say, I just got off the phone with these folks, they want to pay this, I can just hit this and say, I'm not going to collect a payment at this point, but I can send an AR notice and just choose who I want that to go to. And immediately, without leaving the screen, without going anywhere else, it's brought up, as Bill mentioned, a templated email. So it automatically pulled in the client's name, it pulled in the amount outstanding, and then it's attaching a detailed statement of account to this email. So anybody with security rights could send this out. You can also make changes to it. If these folks, if you don't want to even talk about online pay with them, but you want it in as an option normally, you can just wipe that out. You can add personal comments. If you've just spoken to the client or whichever, you just choose, and we can bring the email in as well, but who that needs to go to. And then at that point you hit send and it shoots over to their email. And I'll show you what that looks like, because it's interesting. This is a different message that I had done earlier, but just for the sake of time, thought we would pull this up. You'll notice that it said a detailed statement of account was attached, but it didn't include the attachment at the time. What it does is it goes and builds that instantly at the time of sending. And so what that looks like is one option. We're just showing you a particular option. You can come through and immediately get a summary page. And there's flexibility in how you want to present this, so that I can just see, hey, here's an entire billing and payment history just right off the bat without going through a bunch of transactional detail or anything like this. I can scroll down and actually get a contents or table of contents. So if I just, from that initial information, and you can make these linkable as well, but from the initial information, if I really just want to look at this particular invoice 68, you can come through and select that, takes you directly from there. And based on all the detail listed, I'd probably have a question on that one as well. So maybe that tells us why that's the case. But no, seriously, if we just click that back, if I can get that going, and take us back here. So all of that's available for regardless of the matter that you're on. So as we're coming through and we can clear these filters and see the entire matters, you can do this at the billing matter level. You can also do it at a billing contact level. So the exact same functionality is available at the client as it is in the matter. Now, as we had looked at this earlier too, I'm just going to toggle back for a second so that we come through and see this. We highlighted over the general tab. Again, this is just ingesting information that might be important, because the last thing we want to do is have pieces of information in ProLaw that we need to go jump over and look at. We just want to pull the information out of ProLaw that makes most sense. That would include any of the contacts that are attached here. So these are contacts on your custom tab, related parties, general tab, everything across the board. And then I mentioned activities. Activities are a number of things. They're not events, for one. They're primarily system activities. So if you wanted to think of it about an audit trail of what's going on with this client from a financial standpoint, that's a really good way of looking at it. I can come through and automatically see that this invoice, this statement was sent out. If I want to view the statement, I can do that directly from here. So again, available to you so you can get that full detail. If I want to see payments that have been received, I can go and look at that and see that as well. Now you can go through and create, if I have any, most all of mine are automated. You can go through and create or add new if you just wanted to make a quick note on the matter or a quick note on the contact itself. Hey, I made a call, I did something, anything that you want. And then just like you have an event, you've got different filters. If you only want to look at, statements, or only want to look at all the activity, you have the ability to do that. Now, from an inquiry standpoint, if we come through and you'll see the billing contacts down below, if I drill down into that contact or this billing party, depending on how we've set this up. So this is either by firm level, it can be by client level, matter level, whichever, but it shows me my entire relationship with this client, as well down below of any of the payment options that I've selected. So we won't go into full detail, but if you're taking automatic payments, you can do that, talk about the primary payment method. And then over here to the right, Bill had mentioned the workflows that really are what's the automation behind this. So if we say to just use default workflow settings, I can choose that to do that, or I can come through and actually choose based on what this client's preferences are. If they get their invoices via email, I can just enable email and it will shoot that over. Same thing for AR notice. And then you can set some particular matter triggers. So again, system defaults or firm defaults, but you can come through and set what you think is going to be best for this particular billing party or matter. Now you can also go ahead, Bill.
Get those by billing attorney. So a billing attorney can have their own default workflow in terms of how they would like the follow-up to occur. And then you can override that for specific billing contexts as you're seeing right here. So this is really what you were talking about before, of being able to customize this so that you can meet the needs of different billing attorneys in your firm.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, firm level, billing attorney level, and then also client level. So the attorney could say, hey, normally just send everything on my behalf. I don't care about it. You could say for this one matter, enable email to send it out, but I want to approve it first. So you built in an approval workflow so that they can see anything that's going to go out on his or her behalf. And then just choose, yeah, go ahead and send that. That's great. Hey, let's hold back on that one. So it gives you a little bit of control over the process, but the automation is still built in to where you just have to kind of click once in order to make that happen. And then some just inquiry information along here as well. I do want to just highlight on a couple of the things from an administrative standpoint. As we click here and hit admin settings, there's a bunch of different settings behind this that we want to talk about on the payment processing and how you can link that. But this part's really cool, especially if you're using document assembly. This is kind of document assembly, but for emails. So you can set what your email templates are going to be. We ship with these standard 4, so you can see that the statement email, the AR notice email, and then actually drill down into that and choose what you want your standard language to be. And then you have all the related fields over here to the right that you can just drag and drop directly into your email message in order to have that pull up for you. And we had one firm specifically that said that they didn't know how much time they spent just trying to word the email. So at least having a suggestion, even if you're going to edit it before you send it or at the time of sending, if you wanted to have that control over it, at a minimum, you at least have a starting point to where that you could add your own flair or words to that at that point. Anything you want to add to that, Bill?
Well, what I love about the email approval capability is that it lets a billing attorney who really wants to be on top of the communication going out to their clients to see those emails. They can also have a delegate, so they have a staff person that they work with very closely that reviews those for them. And then as you get comfortable with that, you can then start to send more of them automatically. Or if it's somebody that really loves customizing that, that contact, then we make it very easy to do so.
Yeah, awesome. And so there's some standard collection defaults. This is what we had just looked at. So just at the firm level. So we won't go into great detail on those. I know we've got still a little bit to accomplish here. Very granular security across the board. So again, anything that you need to set up for that. So if people can just view only, edit, have detail capabilities, that it's completely up to the firm. I do want to highlight a couple of things on task because I don't think I did it. It's full service. So as we were talking, and the email queue is part of that, but as we were looking at earlier, there are system tasks, but you can set it up for collections related specific activities as well and assign those to other people or assign them to yourself, just so that if you're coming in and you're performing as a person who does collections, you could just have an open list of everything that you wanted to do that day, week, month, whichever, and then it will manage that for you also.
Yeah,
Now,
I've seen firms do so many different ways of doing that, have a spreadsheet to track their follow-up, or create an event class for it and track it in events. But it's really nice to have a dedicated area that shows that communication. And by doing that, it makes it really easy for a billing attorney to pop in there and see what the accounting staff is doing. And that reminds me of something that I think is actually really important with how we send the emails out. So not only do you have a lot of control over the email template and ability to review them and edit them, but they actually get sent through Outlook. So they show up as a sent item. It gets sent out just like any other email from the firm. So it's not this like separate automated process.
Yeah, which helps to ensure that they actually receive it, right? Because it's coming from somebody that they have a relationship with, that they've received emails most likely from before as well. But additionally gives you that security or not security, but that comfort level of, okay, I sent it, I can go verify that I sent it. And the system will tell you that you did. But if you want to jump over to Outlook for double verification, you can go over there and look at that as well. And you have the comfort of having it in your sent items.
And we've had a question come in a little bit ago, Ken, that I just saw, which is asking, do we integrate with other billing platforms besides ProLaw? And what we have available right this second is ProLaw, but we're actively working on, in fact, we designed this specifically so that we could integrate with other systems. We're not ready to announce that yet, but we're actively developing for other systems right now.
Excellent, good question. So within this, I just want to add a little bit and then we'll pop back over. There's some other tools we want to show you as well. But within Inquiry Queue, one of the really nice things about this is it's all, as I mentioned, in context. So when I come through and highlight just my name, then everything's going to draw dynamically based on that. So I can get my average rate and my hours and how much were fees and things like this. I can choose through and see all of the component had been time, can choose through if I have that, as well as activity codes, and kind of come through across for everything that I want to see. And the same thing's true for any of the different tabs or any of the different buckets. You can come through, and if we're just working with AR, then I have the ability to pull that up, and anything that you're highlighting on, whether it's type, professional, component, everything across the board, or even payments, you have the ability to see that. There's a really nice kind of toggle up here. So if I just want to draw it for November to January, I can do that. And again, it redraws everything that we're looking at based on the items that I've selected. And of course, everybody said, hey, that's great. That gives us the exact information that we need. We can get it all in one place without running a bunch of reports, and we can interact with it and stuff. But the very next question was, how do we get it out of here? And so there is export capability. So you can export all this information to PDF or to Excel as an image if you just wanted to provide it over in a static form, obviously. And you can do that for each of these windows or widgets or whatever you choose to call them as well. So you don't have to do it in mass. You can just say, hey, this part's important to me. I'm going to highlight my name and then export that to Excel. So there's a lot of flexibility in getting the information out as well.
The example I always like, Ken, is going over to the payment tab, because you get this question from attorneys all the time is, okay, well, I know I just got a payment that came in on for this client. I want to see how that payment was distributed. So the same approach works, right? You just go to payments, you click on a particular payment, and then you can see, well, what fees and costs, how was that distributed across attorneys for how that payment was applied.
Yeah, absolutely. Super cool.
And before we switch modes, I want to give just a little bit of a preview of where we're going. So Inquiry Queue gives you financial information at the client and matter level. And the next thing that we're doing is Data Queue, which is these same capabilities, but lets you do it at any level that you want to roll up. So you could go in as a billing attorney and say, okay, I want to see this, but I want to see it across all of my matters where I'm a billing attorney, or originating, or working, or for our med malpractice area, or whatever makes sense. You can create a saved query for that, and then and then pull up dashboards, customize, make your own dashboards around that data. And the way in which we're doing that is a data warehouse built off of the ProLaw data. So it's actually very efficient for us to show that data much faster than it takes to, to do the traditional route of running reports out of ProLaw that, can be time consuming or can be a little challenging to customize and modify. And so we want to make all that information just, available at your fingertips and let you dive into it.
Yeah, and it's probably obvious, but I'll just state it anyway. But this at the same time, anybody that's out here, attorneys, billing staff, whoever's out doing this, anything that they're doing here, they're not doing in ProLaw, which means that the performance on the ProLaw database is not impacted at all by us doing this, which is important, right? So if you have a lot of people searching for this type of information versus running detailed reports and in the matters and inquiry tabs and multiple matters open and all of these things, you can actually improve your ProLaw performance by pulling some of those activities over here. All right, ready to switch, Bill?
Yeah, let's change our focus a little bit and talk about the other area that we've been working on, which is digitalization workflow. This is something we have a ton of experience with, and we've really deepened the integration that we have with all the systems we connect with, but particularly with ProLaw.
Yeah, so absolutely. So what we're talking about, and if you knew InQ before it was InQ ZeroWorks, they've been doing this for a long time. Bill and I brought a little ProLaw flavor to that as well. And they'd actually been integrating with ProLaw for a long time. But as we were out having these conversations with firms and saying, how can we make this part better or this part better? Those folks that were already on using these platforms said, hey, it'd be really great if you could add some functionality on the ProLaw side from a capture standpoint. So we look at this as just another workflow, just like we built workflow around collections and automation. We wanted to do the same thing here. And so what this diagram or what this is actually showing is we brought multiple options for capturing any document that you need to capture. And then we've added the workflow piece to that, which we refer to as queues. So regardless of how any document is being captured, whether it's your iOS device or a scanner at home, or if you're in the firm and using an MFD, you can capture that and send it directly to the DMS or to email or to your accounting system. But we feel like that there's a better way and definitely an additional way to where you could come through and capture that and actually send it to the recipient in a queue or send it to multiple recipients in what's called a shared queue. And just like you have in collection queues where you can review those emails and you can have a delegate that can review those and send them out on your behalf, same thing happens within here. But so completely capture agnostic, but we'll look at queues and kind of show you how that works and specifically how it works with ProLaw. So as I dig into this, we talk about queues. This is scan queue. This is exactly what we're looking at. And so it gives me a temporary inbox for anything that's been digitized. One of the most obvious things that came out of the pandemic was doing this for digital mail. So we created a product called Mail Queue, which is the process of being able to scan anything, and doesn't really matter if we're back in the office. Probably a better way to do it anyway for those that are sometimes in the office, sometimes out of the office. So anything that you scan, they immediately get within queues. So they can see the document, review the document, know exactly what it is. So if whoever scanned it's named it, you have that here. You can see who it was created by and so forth. And then you'll see the delegate options directly from here. So I'm actually looking at all of Phil's stuff as well as Bill's stuff. And then from within that, if I said, hey, I just want to look at mail, I can click and filter. All the categories and tags that are selected are created dynamically based on what's in somebody's queues inbox. And so from there, I could say, okay, it looks like I want to look at this one in more detail. I can pull this purchase agreement up and actually see a full thumbnail sketch, or not thumbnail, full sketch of, or full picture of the document. And then I have some decisions that I can make of what I want to do. One of the things that we wanted to do, since we're so focused on the actual work and how workflow fits in with that, is again, build everything that you need to do with paper documents once they've been digitized into this process. And so one way that we do that is just by building editing directly into this. So we have all the Adobe style PDF editing tools that are built in. So if I wanted to come in and highlight a section and then maybe add notes before I send it off to somebody else, or before I put it in the DMS, I could. If I were sending this outside of the firm and I wanted to apply true redaction, I can highlight that and do that. And there's a myriad of other options as well, from digital signatures and putting on, draft stamps and finals and approved and things like this that you can come through and do all with the editing tools. And then ultimately, once you've made all the changes that you care to make, you can come through and I mentioned reassign. If somebody else needs to see this before it gets to the DMS, you can of course do that, or I can just choose to route it. And I've got a couple of examples here, but today we're going to focus on ProLaw. We actually work with, just in case the question comes up, many of the popular DMSs out there. But I could come through, and even at that point, if I wanted to, as I said, when I applied redaction, send it out to somebody outside the firm, I can send that via email. I could put it to a shared network folder or something like this. But if I select ProLaw, I'm going to get 4 different options for how I want to store this document. And so these are some of the new pieces of functionality that we brought in. So you can send it over to My Matters, which is pretty obvious to this group, any matter to which you're assigned. And based on you being the person logged in, I can send it to All Matters. I can also send it to journals and or to contacts, which was new functionality. So as we come through and say, here's the matter, here's who I am and the document type, and just kind of click next, that can get it directly to the matter. If I click on journals, it's actually going to show me a journal number that I can attach to this. So I can go out and find that, scan, and then immediately attach that. So selecting a journal entry, it'll give me the further detail for exactly how I want that stored. And then also just directly into billing contacts or any contact for that matter. If I have anything I want to scan and just attach it to a contact, I have the ability to add that to them as well. And just kind of going through the exact same preferences, exact same user interface, and additionally instructions right here to the left of what we're doing. We're choosing the workflow, we're completing the workflow, and then a couple of different options that you can choose to set. And the really the last thing on this, and maybe one of the most important pieces, is because we can scan to email right now. Anybody can. I mean, you can do that directly from the device. But this gives you, ScanQ gives you a full audit trail of everything that's happening with those scans. So we had one example of certified mail coming in. We scanned it, we sent it via email. We don't really know what happened to it at that point. Did they forward it? Did it ever go to where it needed to go? Or any document that needs to go to the DMS? So this gives you a full administrative view as well as an end user view, depending on security, of exactly what's happened to these documents. You can link to it back into ProLaw. You can drop down and see the changes that were made, who it was routed to, edits that were done, and things like that. But so just 2 kind of high level overviews of what we've been working on, some of the tools for ProLaw. But I think anything you want to add, Bill, before we I'll just escape out of here.
I just had one really small thing I wanted to throw in, which is the searching in Matters also covers custom tabs, which often you have your file number field there that is what clients refer to it as, which is really handy to have when you're trying to attach a scanned document to a matter. And the contact example is really kind of interesting. It tends to be a little bit niche in terms of your practice area, but in the cases where you need to do that, it's really nice being able to do so. And we actually can support both ProLaw and a DMS at the same time. So if you're using a separate, it's great if you're using ProLaw for everything. That's awesome. But if you have World Docs or iManage in addition, you can have integration for ProLaw on the journals and contact side, and then World Docs for the document, for the normal matter related documents.
Awesome. So I saw we had some other chat, no other questions right at the moment. Doesn't seem like.
Yeah, one that comes up often is if we go back to our starting point with collection queue, is how does that work? How do we manage that integration with ProLaw? Do all the things that you talked about of sort of taking that load off of ProLaw, and what we do is run an update every 15 minutes. So the very first time we run it, it's not like what you're accustomed to with data conversions at all, where you have like this, month-long process. We just turn on our integration with ProLaw, and the first time it runs, it takes an hour or 2 hours. We had a really large firm that is our longest. It took 3 hours to run, and then once we've done that for the first time, it just runs every 15 minutes, and it's very quick to update the changes that have occurred, and that gives you a data warehouse running on ZebraWorks that is what Collection Queue uses, and it's a much more efficient way for us to get the data that we want out of ProLaw because of the way that we have organized and summarized the data as part of that integration.
Yeah, it's one of the easiest parts of the conversation when you start talking about implementation, and having been involved in billing implementations for 20 plus years. This is like a 7 to 14 day process from start to finish, having all your data over and beginning to being able to realize the benefits right away, which makes it a little bit easier than having to wait multiple months at a time, or go through a conversion that requires tons and tons of review and multiple passes and things like this. That part has made my life a lot easier, and I appreciate you for that, Bill, and making that happen. So
we have a question, Ken, about how does the scanning that we just showed, how does that compare with ProLaw's profiling?
Yeah, so like a profiling from an email or something like that.
Yeah, I would assume so. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So, there's a couple of things. One, we use the Abby search engine, or the Abby OCR engine. So everything that we scan is using the absolute very highest level of OCR capability. So those documents, in addition to being just digital, they're actually OCR, so they're fully searchable when they get into the database, all of those types of things. The profiling is actually modeled exactly after ProLaw's. We've had a lot of IT folks in particular say, hey, we would love to not clog all of the Exchange inbox with any digital document that's been done. But a little bit difference is once you've gotten it to email, you could have used any scanning platform. And if you're using OCR, that would be one difference. If you're just scanning directly from the device and getting it to email, then the profiling would be similar, with the exception of that's the only option that you have. So if that document doesn't belong in ProLaw, but does belong in a different place, then it provides you more destinations, if you will. And then again, gives you that full audit trail of knowing whether or not something's actually happened with the document. And then of course, the ability to be able to edit and do those things as part of the process as well. Because if it gets into my inbox, then I can pull it up via a different editing tool, make some of those edits, and then come back and profile that document upon saving it and things like this. We just feel like this way is a bit more streamlined.
Yeah, and shared queues are really powerful, because you can create one for docketing or accounting, or for a large case that you have. It makes it much more efficient to get the documents to the right people.
Yeah, I mean, they call it my inbox for a reason, right? Like on Outlook. So typically there's not as many shared inboxes. And even if I have delegate access, most likely I don't want somebody seeing everything that comes in my email. So if it's been emailed to the wrong person, then they're potentially forwarding it to the right person, but also somebody could have immediate access to see it, even though somebody else is going to action it, which is really nice. And probably we should say too, just so you don't think we're completely crazy, at the end of this quarter, we're actually building queues into Outlook as well, so that if the attorneys want that look and feel of I'm in my inbox and I don't ever want to leave it, just send me the documents like you always have. They'll have there's an add-on that we've built in that works much differently than the old add-ons, which I'm sure Bill could talk about, but it will actually expose that same everything that we looked at directly from within Outlook. Eventually we'll push that to Teams as well. But we've fought for a long time for the attorney desktop and realized a decade or so ago that the attorney desktop's outlook. So we're just pushing as much functionality there as well, so that they have that user experience that they desire.
Yeah, and that's Microsoft's new web add-ins, which means it works in Outlook on the desktop, in the browser, the Outlook app on your phone or iPad. So it's a great way to get those documents out to the attorney, immediately the moment it's scanned. And so I see it as the best of both worlds, because you get it in the same place, but it doesn't have the disadvantages of going through email. And that example of delegate access is a really interesting one, because of course we have delegate access within ScanQ, but then we also have the ability to mark a document as private, so most of the documents scanned for an attorney can be seen by their assistant. But something that truly should be, that attorney's eyes only, you mark it as private. There's really just no way to do things like that in email. And people are so overwhelmed by email that anytime we can find a good way to get stuff out of email, I think so a positive thing.
Awesome. Well, I think we're at time, Bill, if there's no other questions.
Wow, we have timed this perfectly. Thanks, Ken. You've done an awesome job with the demo. I appreciate you doing all the hard work.
Thanks for joining me and for all of that, and appreciate everybody joining us and spending the time to look at this. We're happy to go into more detail at any point. We've got a whole team of extremely talented and willing participants who will give you a demo, give you any information that you need. So just reach out if we can be of any assistance.
Thanks, everyone.
All right.